Discover the inspiring hidden truth behind the stock market's incredible resilience, revealed. Jack Thompson sat behind the creaking counter of Thompson's Hardware, his fingers tracing the worn edges of the family's old register. It had once burst open to the sound of jingling change, but today it felt like a tombstone marking a business fading into obscurity. As he counted the day's meager sales, Jack's heart sank. He could almost hear his father's voice echoing in the dusty aisles, reminding him that hard work always pays off. Yet here he was, barely scraping by in a town that had stopped believing in the promise of a family store. Across the street, he saw Mr. Harris settled on his porch, his wise gaze piercing through the fading sunlight. The elderly neighbor was a former finance professor, always ready with a quip or a life lesson, a lighthouse in Jack's stormy sea of doubts. As if catching Jack's eye, Mr. Harris gestured him over. With every step, Jack felt a mix of desperation and hope. Could this old man bear the secret to reviving what felt irretrievably lost? Their unlikely friendship blossomed into mentorship. Clipped conversations flowed into evenings wrapped in charts and analysis papers. Jack plunged into stock market research with fervor, unearthing a talent for analysis he never knew he had. Each discovery felt like a small light in a shadowed room. But with the exhilaration came vulnerability. Jack felt the market's volatility rippling through his veins. Each upturn was a high, while the downturns tumbled him into despair. Could he really stake his family's legacy on this uncertain gamble? Before long, as he pored over a report one evening, the sense of unease settled in like lead. An influential investment firm had its eyes on local businesses, their moves cloaked in secrecy, but their intent as clear as day: to swallow up what had once been a cherished community. Jack's heart raced as he pushed back the panic rising within him. This was more than just a threat to his store. It was an assault on the fabric of everything he'd grown up believing in. Battling his mounting anxiety, he confronted a chilling question. Should he remain silent, safeguarding his own interests, or take a stand, risking everything? As the days dragged on, each interaction with Mr. Harris stoked Jack's fears and desires. The thrill of market strategy warred against the gnawing worry of betrayal. He couldn't shake the shadow of his father's legacy. What would his father have done? In the sanctuary of the store, Jack imagined touching his father's old tools. Memories flooding in of nights spent working together. Those were the lessons of hard work, honesty, and community that tugged at his soul. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications, so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now, let's continue. Deep into the night, Jack lay awake, tangled in thoughts of obligation and morality. How could he defend his father's honor while facing the terrifying prospect of failing the very business that had been their pride? Every heartbeat pulsed with fear. As despair clawed at him, he grasped for clarity amidst the storm of doubt. If he chose to fight back, would the consequences obliterate everything he'd built? The weight pressed down, leaving him breathless. Jack sat at his desk, staring at a blank page where an action plan should form, his mind racing, thoughts colliding in a chaotic symphony. It was just him, at this crumbling crossroads, gripped by a life-altering decision that could either rejuvenate his family's legacy or see it shattered into a million pieces. The air crackled with tension. The resolution to this struggle hung like a blade poised to fall, leaving Jack teetering between two worlds, one of heritage and another of survival. As dawn broke, Jack's resolve crystallized into something more defined. The early morning light offered a moment of respite. It illuminated the dust motes swirling leisurely through the air, mirroring his swirling thoughts. The world outside felt quieter than usual, as if the universe was holding its breath, waiting for him to make a choice. He thought back to his conversations with Mr. Harris, the moments spent poring over financial graphs and dissecting trends. They had ignited a fire in him, a passion that pulsed steadily beneath the layers of doubt. This wasn't just about saving Thompson's hardware. It was about reclaiming a piece of his life that he thought was lost forever. What if the key to survival lay not merely in his hands, but in the courage to confront the darkness facing him? Rising from his desk, Jack flipped over the blank page, determined to fill it with a plan. He had spent too long fretting over uncertainties. It was time to channel that anxiety into productive action. He grabbed a pen, jotting down the first items that swirled in his mind: research competitors, assess community support, develop a financial strategy that both honored his father's legacy and equipped his business to resist being swallowed whole. His thoughts flitted to the investment firm, those faceless sharks lurking just beyond the horizon. They had leveraged fear and volatility to wring control from people like him. But Jack was no longer a passive player. He was armed with newfound knowledge and a determination to defend that which had shaped him. Fear could serve as a lighthouse or a prison. The choice was his. As the day progressed, Jack took to the streets with a sense of purpose. He approached local business owners, forging alliances and sharing his insights about the impending threat. It was awkward at first. The chatter felt stilted, barely masking the shared anxiety. Yet as Jack laid out his strategy while gathering feedback and support, a flicker of hope ignited among the group. They discussed ways to pool resources, find common ground, and amplify their voices in unity for the first time in years. In those exchanges, he sensed an unexpected continuity. Conversations blossomed not only into plans, but into ideas for collective marketing initiatives and community events, breathing life into the town's beleaguered spirit. Jack was discovering that his leadership didn't rest solely on traditional measures of authority. It was rooted in his capability to inspire and ignite the ambitions of those around him. With every new connection made, something shifted within Jack. The gnawing fear pulsed less aggressively. It was replaced by a sense of purpose that brewed into a powerful energy. He could almost hear his father's voice again, not as a warning, but as a resonance of pride, as if he were saying, "You're not alone. Fight for what's right." But there lay an unfinished thread, the looming presence of the investment firm. Jack knew that while he was moving forward, there would come a day when he faced them directly. Would he be able to muster the courage when confronting their heavy-handed tactics? Later that evening, while recovering from the day's effort, he received a message that sent ripples of apprehension through him. An invitation to meet with a consultant favoring the investment firm rang a dissonant bell in his mind. What did they want? Were they trying to swindle him, or was there something deeper at play here? Jack stood still, heart racing. The time had come to face the choices he had made and the path he had forged. Would he stand firm or fold under pressure? The survival of everything he held dear was at stake, and he sensed the chilling urgency within his own choices. This was only the beginning. With the uncertainty of the consultant's invitation weighing heavily on his mind, Jack found it increasingly challenging to focus on his immediate surroundings. The shadows deepened as the sun slipped below the horizon, casting a long, daunting shadow that seemed to mirror the emotional turmoil inside him. He paced the small confines of his workshop, its familiar sense of wood and varnish belied by the mounting tension he felt. As he played with the tools in his hands, he couldn't shake the urge to make a decision. Could he really afford to meet with someone linked to the investment firm? There was comfort in abstaining from confrontation, a false sense of safety in the ignorance of being unaware. Yet this avoidance felt inadequate now. After the progress he'd made, retreating wouldn't just be disappointing, it would be a personal betrayal. He sat down at his workbench, determined to confront his tangled thoughts. A blank notebook lay beside him. The very embodiment of potential that he had already begun to fill with plans. The first page felt like solid ground beneath him, offering a chance to untangle the mess in his head. He wrote down his fears, the unknown intentions behind the consultant's invitation, the potential of losing Thompson's hardware, and the doubts that still echoed remnants of years past. But alongside each fear, he wrote down the reasons to face them head-on. Jack began to realize the dichotomy within him. While on one side lurked anxiety, on the other, an undeniable desire to reclaim ownership of his life. Divided but persistent, he decided to summon the courage he had cultivated through his recent actions. Jack understood that this challenge was less about the consultant and more about reaffirming his commitment to his father's legacy. The next day dawned with renewed clarity. After a restless night, he ventured back into the streets, now buoyed by the prospect of grappling with his fears. He donned his father's old work coat, a tangible reminder of the man who had nurtured him and instilled the value of resilience and hard work. Jack felt empowered, as though he were donning a suit of armor and stepping into battle. Approaching the desk in the back of the hardware store, the phone rang like lightning cracking open the sky, sharp and full of potential. It was Mr. Harris, intrigued to know how Jack was preparing for the meeting. Their discussion felt electric, each idea fueling the next like some intricate machine designed to generate momentum. As they strategized together, Jack felt the doubts receding, replaced by a sense of clarity. "Remember, Jack," Mr. Harris advised, "knowledge is your greatest ally. Let it guide you in that meeting. Don't let them corner you. You're not just defending a business, but your identity." Armed with this wisdom, Jack spent the next few hours delving deep into research, preparing for the encounter he both anticipated and dreaded. He practiced his delivery, focusing on the knowledge he had amassed, honing his argument until it felt like second nature. He implored the entrepreneur inside him to rise to the occasion, drawing upon the newly formed alliances that had begun to echo with the voices of those who believed in him. As the time drew near for the meeting, Jack stepped outside, the morning air sharp and invigorating. He took a deep breath, centering himself amidst the anxiety that flared within. His resolve solidified. He would confront the nuances of his own vulnerability, a task more confrontational than simply facing down the consultants. The thought lingered as he stepped into the meeting venue. What truths about himself might he uncover in this conflict? This wasn't merely about the business or the investment firm's tactics, but about discovering the depth of his own grit and perseverance. As the door swung open, he saw the consultant sitting at the table with a disarming smile. And with that smile, Jack's heart raced anew. He was about to discover not only where his strength lay, but also test the very foundations of what he believed to be right and just. Yet what he didn't yet understand was that beneath that smile lay a startling revelation that would challenge everything he thought he knew, pushing him towards an unexpected fork in the road. The consultant's smile, at once warm and enigmatic, held an air of authority that made Jack acutely aware of his own smallness in this vast arena of business. As he took a seat across the polished table, he felt like a moth drawn to a flame, nervous yet compelled to step closer. With Mr. Harris's voice echoing in his mind, Jack steeled himself, recalling the truths he had unearthed about his fears and strengths in recent days. "Jack," the consultant began, his tone inviting but his gaze sharp, "I appreciate you taking the time to meet with me. Your father's legacy deserves careful stewardship, and I believe we have opportunities to discuss." The words hung in the air, echoing a dual promise of risk and reward that tugged at the corners of Jack's mind. How would he navigate this delicate terrain? Jack couldn't ignore the undercurrent of unease stemming from the firm's reputation. He remembered the stories. Companies pushed to their limits, values sacrificed on the altar of profit. Yet beneath that unease surged a current of defiance, reminding him that he held one card strong, his commitment to his father's principles. As the conversation unfolded, the consultant presented ideas, a prospect of investment that, while enticing, felt like a trap cloaked in opportunity. With the right backing, Thompson's could not only thrive but expand, the consultant suggested, his eyes narrowing with what Jack interpreted as excitement. Imagine a new location, a broader inventory, a larger market share. Or losing everything, Jack interjected, feeling the pulse of panic rising in his throat. What happens to my father's vision in this equation? Are we just going to chase the profit margins at the expense of our core values? Each word tumbled out, underscoring the delicate balance he sought between ambition and integrity. The consultant leaned back, assessing Jack rather than the numbers sprawled on the table. "It's not inherently flawed to seek growth," he replied smoothly. "What matters is the approach you take. You can preserve your father's legacy while adapting to modern markets." Jack's mind raced. The challenge was not a battle of wits, but a test of self. Was he indeed willing to adapt, or would the fear of transformation paralyze him? With each argument laid out, Jack found himself in a precarious balancing act between preservation and progress, caught in the center of a storm he had only recently begun to embrace. He envisioned the possibilities that lay ahead: partnerships, community outreach, and innovations that could breathe life into the shop while honoring its origins. Shadows of insecurity flickered, but they dimmed as he envisioned the faces of those who had once walked through the doors. It was more than a business. It was a heartbeat, a space built on relationships and trust. "Let's talk strategy," Jack said, voice steadying as determination unfurled within him. He focused on the aspects of the proposal that aligned with his vision, drawing on the research he had prepared. This was not just the consultant's game, it was a negotiation grounded in values. As the meeting progressed, each point Jack made chipped away at the fear that clung to him, revealing a confidence he hadn't anticipated. They debated ideas, creating a back and forth that felt less like a mere presentation and more like a chess match where each move was equally critical. Slowly, Jack redefined the landscape of the discussion, crafting his vision into every aspect of the conversation. Yet, as the discussion wound down, the consultant leaned closer, an intensity threading through his words. "Jack, you have to understand the stakes at play. This is about resilience, not just for Thompson's, but for you personally. What will it take to make this work?" Jack hesitated, wrestling with the unspoken implications. Resilience? Was he prepared to confront not just the market, but his own deepest uncertainties? This moment could mark the beginning of something transformative, an awakening of potential long buried beneath self-doubt. The consultant's smile remained, but now it felt more like a challenge than an invitation, igniting within Jack a fierce will to uncover the truths about himself, the risks he was willing to take, and the legacy he genuinely wanted to uphold. As he left the meeting, a sense of urgency flooded through him. The path ahead was tangled in possibility and peril, uncertain and electrifying. The weight of decisions loomed large, eclipsing the initial fears that had once parked themselves in his mind. Jack felt the flicker of resolve. He stood on the precipice of discovery, not just of the market's resilience, but of his own. What unfolding revelations awaited him on the horizon of this journey, and could they restore the very essence of Thompson's hardware? The door had opened, and with it a flood of questions rushed forth. What would he find on the other side? The prospect of identity, legacy, and fear danced tantalizingly close. Jack stepped out of the glimmering glass building and into the bustling street, the sounds of the city blaring in his ears. It felt foreign and overwhelming, the cacophony amplifying the ambivalence swirling within him. His thoughts were a whirlwind of questions, doubts, and flickers of newfound ambition. How could a simple meeting challenge the very fabric of his existence? Yet, at the same time, he could not ignore the ember of excitement igniting beneath the weight of his uncertainties. His father's legacy weighed heavily on his shoulders, a shadow that followed him relentlessly. Jack had long played the role of the dutiful son, but now he faced the stark truth. He had to evolve beyond that identity. The prospect of driving Thompson's hardware into a new era beckoned like a siren's call, luring him with the promise of innovation and growth. Before he could process it fully, thoughts of his father's store consumed him. He remembered the quiet mornings spent alongside the older man behind the worn wooden counter. They had shared laughter, the sound of customers exchanging stories, and the smell of freshly cut wood mingling with the scent of rusted tools. Jack closed his eyes, conjuring those moments, but now they felt like ghosts tied to a world that was fading. Was he prepared to let go? He made his way back to the shop, hands tucked in his pockets. As he walked, he mulled over the consultant's words. Resilience, adaptation, the balance of progress without forsaking heritage. All had become key notes in this uncertain symphony that was his life and business. Yet was resilience truly possible without authenticity? Inside the shop, the familiar creak of the door signaled his arrival, and the warmth wrapped him like a comforting embrace. The rows of shelves loomed around him, sturdy and dependable. Jack ran his fingers along the cold surfaces, feeling the history embedded in each product, each choice that had led his father to build this establishment. He understood now it was more than mere inventory. It was a manifestation of their lives, their family's values. Determined, he set about organizing his thoughts. He opened his laptop, ready to draft a plan that would honor his father while inviting change. Jack understood that to grow Thompson's hardware, he could no longer operate out of fear. Instead, he must learn to wield fear as a tool for opportunity. As the sun dipped below the horizon, spilling golden light through the shop's large windows, he charted a path forward. He wouldn't abandon the core principles that had guided his father. Instead, he would throw open the doors to possibility, encouraging an openness to innovation while grounding each step in his father's values. But as ideas flowed from his fingertips, uncertainty clawed at his mind. The consultant hadn't just posed questions about the business, he had posed questions about Jack himself. Who was he really? A leader? A steward? A nightmarish imposter? The realization hit him. This was not just the resurrection of a company. This was the reclamation of his identity. The stakes were high. If he failed, would it confirm his deepest fears? He took a deep breath, fighting against the urge to succumb. The resistance must transform into resolve. He had to face those internal barriers, rewrite them into stepping stones towards his goals. Hours passed, and still Jack remained over his notes, transforming half-formed thoughts into actionable steps. Just as he began to find rhythm in his plans, a notification chimed on his phone. Glancing down, he saw it was from the consultant, a follow-up to their meeting. The message was crisp, yet the tone whispered urgency. "I'm intrigued by what we discussed. This is an unfolding narrative for you. Let's meet again to push the dialogue forward." Jack's heart raced, apprehension crashing over him. Was he truly ready to step into this narrative, embrace the role not just as a shop owner, but as an architect of his destiny? Each moment defined him, but he could either soar or spiral. As he stared out at the neon lights shimmering through the glass doors, Jack felt the weight of that decision coalesce into clarity. The moment had come to face not only the external challenges of the market, but also the intricate landscape within himself. What would he choose to fortify? The facade of doing what was expected, or the path of leaders and visionaries who dared to dream? All of this dawned on him with one final thought. The heartbeat of Thompson's lay in his hands, and the direction he chose next would carve out his own legacy. And as the darkness settled, Jack knew a new chapter awaited. One where he would have to confront not just his father's legacy, but the shadow of who he might become. What risks was he truly prepared to take? And what did he hope to discover about himself and the real essence of the family business? The tumultuous journey had just begun. Jack leaned back in his chair, fingers hovering above the laptop. The blinking cursor seemed to mock him, each blink echoing his uncertainty. What was he trying to articulate? His vision for Thompson's hardware felt both clear and blurred. As he reread the last few sentences, they seemed hollow. They weren't him. They were merely echoes of what he thought he should say, not what he truly believed. He needed to dig deeper. Closing his eyes, he let memories wash over him. Saturday mornings at the shop, the sound of customers sharing their lives between aisles stacked with tools and paint. Those were the moments that built the community, birthed loyalty, and sparked joy. But could he capture that essence in a plan that called for technological integration and market expansion? Could those old, cherished values coexist alongside the unyielding demands of modern commerce? Setting the screen aside, Jack pulled out a piece of paper. The tactile feel of pen against paper offered a strange comfort. Words flowed freely. Flexibility, community, connection, authenticity. They were the pillars he wanted to build upon, the framework of who he was and who he aspired to be. Consciously or subconsciously, he was rejecting the shadow of doubt that had lingered for too long. This was his time to step out of the darkness. With a fresh perspective, Jack began drafting an outline. He started with a mission statement that reflected both his father's values and his own ambition for the future. Thompson's Hardware, a bridge between tradition and innovation, serving as a community hub for craftsmanship and connection. He could almost feel the words resonate, solidifying his belief in what they could accomplish. But as he scribbled ideas for innovations, an improved website, workshops on home improvement techniques, a partnership with local schools to inspire young tradespeople, doubt threatened to creep back in. What if these ideas felt too ambitious? What if the community rejected change? These questions felt familiar, coaxing Jack to weigh his intentions against the fears that had long held him captive. He had to confront the very thing that had shackled him, the fear of failure anchored in his father's legacy. Jack's heart raced as realization struck. Failure didn't mean the end. It was a necessary part of growth. He envisioned his father, who often spoke of resilience, telling him that every expert was once a beginner. Perhaps this was his journey into becoming that expert. Suddenly, a new thought pierced through the fog. What if he opened the shop to community input? A closed meeting with stakeholders said little about the people who walked through Thompson's doors day after day. Remembering a successful local initiative where residents shaped the future of their neighborhood, Jack felt a surge of inspiration. Could he invite customers to participate in the crafting of the shop's future? Fueled by newfound resolve, he grabbed his phone and typed a message. Introducing community feedback sessions at Thompson's Hardware. Let's shape our destiny together. A simple invitation to engage, it felt monumental. As he hit send, Jack realized this wasn't merely about his business. It was about creating an inclusive culture. It was assuredly a risk, but one worth taking. But with every step forward, the specter of his father's shadow loomed large. What would he think of this? Would he see it as a betrayal of their shared history, or an honorable evolution? An internal battle sparked within him, but Jack pressed on. This was about weaving their collective legacies into something dynamic and rich, not discarding the past, but embracing its potential. As he wrapped up the details for the feedback sessions, anticipation clenched his gut. He felt a sense of purpose flooding back, but with it, the questions remained. How would he handle dissent? What if the feedback revealed ideas he couldn't accommodate? And most importantly, what would he do when faced with the hard truths of the community's expectations? Jack took a deep breath, recognizing the urgency of his next steps. He would have to confront these issues head-on, prepared for the volatility that might arise. As he stood up, looking around the shop that had witnessed both his childhood and his father's dreams, Jack felt ready, or at least as ready as he could be. He was on the brink of transformation, both personally and professionally. But as he turned off the lights, a nagging feeling gnawed at him. He had invited the community in, but would he actually be prepared for what they might say? The time had come to face the reality of engagement, both the possibilities and the fears it might unravel. Would he stand firm or falter? The uncertainty loomed, leaving Jack with more questions than answers, yet filled with an insatiable desire to discover the truth of his journey ahead. Following days, in a sense of suspended reality, the weight of the upcoming community feedback sessions pressing on his chest like an unshakable burden. He understood the journey he had begun, but actually facing the people whose opinions could redefine the shop felt daunting. Every moment of the day sparked concern about how to facilitate genuine dialogue while staying true to his vision. As he prepared for the first session, he went through the motions of arranging chairs and setting up a projector, but internally he wrestled with conflicting thoughts. What if the suggestions and critiques shattered his aspirations? Would the feedback reflect more about their discontent than their desires? The mere thought gripped him with a familiar sense of dread. Yet, buried beneath that was a flicker of excitement, the possibility of connection and collaboration. When the evening arrived, Jack found himself in the dimly lit space of Thompson's hardware, nervousness causing his palms to sweat. He felt his heart race as the first customers trickled in, a mix of familiar faces and new ones. Each person seemed to carry an aura of expectation and curiosity, as if they were just as eager as he was to see what unfolded. Once everyone was seated, Jack took a deep breath and approached the makeshift podium. "Thank you all for coming," he started, his voice steady, though he felt the tremor of anxiety beneath the surface. "I want us to talk about the future of Thompson's hardware. Your thoughts, your experiences, they matter to me." He paused, looking out at the crowd, searching for encouragement, but also bracing himself for critiques. Responses flowed surprisingly freely. Customers shared their memories of the store, reminiscing fondly about the afternoons spent in the aisles. Their stories formed a tapestry of nostalgia that reminded Jack why he loved this place. Just then, a woman raised her hand hesitantly, her brow furrowed with concern. "It seems like you're planning for the future, Jack, but I worry it might change what made this hardware store special." As the words sunk into him, Jack felt not just the sting of criticism, but a flicker of clarity. "I understand that feeling," he replied, his voice gaining confidence. "I don't want to lose what we have. Changes are meant to build on our legacy, not erase it." This realization felt like a shift in perspective, an acceptance of the fact that change could be a bridge rather than a chasm. The feedback rolled in, encompassing a spectrum of ideas. While some suggestions came with apprehension, others sparked unfiltered passion. Jack listened, his mind racing to connect the dots between their ideas and his vision. Each comment offered insight into how deeply integrated Thompson's was into the community's fabric, igniting ideas he hadn't considered. As the session wrapped, Jack felt a sense of relief mixed with the unpredictable exhilaration of collaboration. However, lingering unease shadowed him. He didn't have all the answers yet. How would he analyze and synthesize their thoughts? Would he disappoint them if he couldn't implement every suggestion? The gravity of that possibility gnawed at him. After the crowd dispersed, he gathered the notes and ideas tossed around during the evening. The pages brimmed with potential, a plethora of voices clamoring for acknowledgement, and within them was a clear lesson. He was not alone in this. He was a conduit for others' dreams and aspirations. As he walked home, the breeze carried with it a shred of hope, but the complexities of transformation hovered in his mind like a storm cloud. Jack realized he would need strategy to balance the desire for authenticity and the inevitable changes ahead. This was an ongoing negotiation, not just with the community, but also within himself. Arriving home, he sat at his kitchen table, surrounded by the remnants of the evening's insight. The bold strokes of suggestions splattered across his notes called to him. How could he weave all these voices into a coherent identity for the hardware store? He recognized he would need to cultivate not just this change, but also his own ability to navigate the tensions between tradition and innovation. The looming question transformed into a challenge. What if he turned this uncertainty into an opportunity for deeper engagement? His heart raced at the thought. He had the tools for transformation, but he needed to sharpen them. Could he translate feedback into action without losing sight of the shop's soul? Jack resolved to start delineating a plan that showcased their input while honoring the roots of Thompson's hardware. There was no straight path ahead, only a winding road of discovery, but he felt invigorated. Would his journey uncover the essential truth behind balancing passion and progress? This quest for authenticity, amid all its hurdles, began to define him. Yet, as he settled into the quiet of night, the pervasive thought lingered. Would he truly be ready for the deeper challenges ahead? What if the community's desires evolved far beyond his initial vision? The feelings of anticipation, tinged with a hint of trepidation, swirled within him, marking the beginning of a bolder phase in his development. The morning sun spilled through Jack's kitchen window, casting stripes of light across his notes. The remnants of last night's discussions lay before him, a chaotic mix of thoughts and ideas, each scribbled word a building block for his evolving vision. However, clarity remained elusive. The daunting task of synthesizing the community's aspirations weighed heavily on him. Could he honor their concerns while still driving change? He poured himself a cup of coffee and leaned back in his chair, searching for a way forward. The question persisted. How would he juggle the varying opinions? Bile rose in his throat at the thought of disappointing the very people he aimed to serve. But then a flicker of resolve took root within him. This was not just a burden, it was a pivotal moment that demanded action. He decided to tackle the notes, clustering suggestions into categories: nostalgia, innovation, community involvement, and sustainability. As he sifted through their words, something remarkable happened. He began to see threads connect. The nostalgic memories rooted in the shop's legacy stood alongside an eagerness for innovation. Each sought to strengthen rather than overshadow the other. Jack leaned into this realization, aware that his strength lay not in rejecting change, but in navigating how to blend it with tradition. By mid-afternoon, he felt a surge of energy as he sat at his desk typing furiously. Jack drafted a plan outlining potential changes, enhancing product lines, hosting workshops, and fostering a more sustainable approach to business. Each idea flowed from insights gained during the feedback session, morphing from vague impressions into actionable strategies. It was an awakening of sorts. He marveled at that moment when uncertainty shifted into purpose. Yet, with these plans crystallizing, an internal debate took shape. Jack questioned whether he was equipped to lead this evolution. Did he have what it took to guide a store steeped in history while pivoting toward the future? A deep-seated fear simmered, threatening to unravel his newfound conviction. What if the ideas, once implemented, led to backlash? What if customers felt even further distanced from the shop they cherished? Pushing that doubt aside, he decided to deepen the engagement rather than retreat. Instead of solely presenting a finalized plan, Jack would aim to circulate preliminary ideas among the community. He envisioned informal sessions, a space where people could express their thoughts on the changes he proposed. In doing so, he would not only receive feedback, but would actively involve them in the adoption process. Empowered by this strategy, he reached for his phone, crafting a quick message to invite eager participants to this new gathering. Yet, as he pressed send, a sudden wave of anxiety washed over him. Would they see these sessions as yet another made-for-show attempt at community inclusion? The thought turned his stomach. Jack took a deep breath. He understood this was a risk, but he also recognized that overcoming his fear of rejection was part of his growth. To thrive in this dual role of curator and innovator, he'd have to confront his vulnerabilities openly. Engaging in real conversation could help bridge any gaps that remained between tradition and change. The evening crept in quietly, and Jack's home felt different, a polished cliff's edge teetering between uncertainty and possibility. But a question lingered. Would he be able to implement his plans effectively, using that engagement to foster a genuine sense of belonging? As he watched the sunset transform the sky into a palette of colors, he felt the pulse of possibility quicken again within him. The stakes were high, but the willingness to embrace risk was necessary. He was ready to dive back into the community, armed with not just ideas, but a genuine commitment to collaborative evolution. Just as the last rays of light faded, the question echoed in his mind, amplifying his resolve. What would happen when he opened the floodgates of genuine dialogue? The next morning arrived with an undercurrent of tension swirling in Jack's stomach. As he prepared for the first meeting, the coffee simmering on the stove became a comforting ritual, each gurgle echoing a reminder that he was stepping into uncharted territory. Jack glanced over the small table where his notes lay, the messy scrawl of ideas now feeling both like a testament to his progress and a symbol of all that could go wrong. Arriving at the store, he was greeted by familiar sights and sounds, the creak of the wooden floorboards beneath him, the scent of fresh bread wafting through the air, and the gentle chime of the door announcing each customer. These moments, steeped in nostalgia, were enriched by the gravity of what lay ahead. He felt fragile and bold at once, a tightrope walker on the precarious line of tradition and transformation. As the first few guests began to trickle in, Jack positioned himself causally by the counter, feigning confidence while mentally rehearsing his opening lines. The goal was to create an atmosphere where people felt free to share their feelings without fear of judgment. Yet a gnawing voice inside him questioned whether he belonged in this role of facilitator. Was he truly capable of guiding others through this metamorphosis, or was he simply a man caught up in his own vision, blinded to the needs of the collective? Once everyone settled, Jack recognized a mix of curiosity and skepticism reflected in the eyes facing him. He cleared his throat, the sound almost swallowed by the anticipation in the air. "Thank you all for coming," he began, his voice steady but betraying a hint of nerves. "I want to share some ideas on how we can honor our store's legacy while also embracing change. Your insights are invaluable to this process." The initial response was muted, as if they were weighing his sincerity against their own reservations. After a moment, an older woman named Mabel spoke up, her voice rich with emotion. "Change has been hard for us. This store isn't just bricks and mortar, it's part of our lives. What do you plan to do that can honor that?" This question, laced with vulnerability and concern, struck at Jack's core. He took a deep breath, his mind racing as he recognized that he was confronted not just with a logistical challenge, but with an emotional one. "I appreciate your honesty, Mabel," he replied, unsure of how to ease the tension. "What if we could incorporate more local products, maybe a line that reflects our history, while still adding new items that excite our younger customers?" Responses flowed like a gentle stream after this initial spark, with ideas and stories weaving a rich tapestry of perspectives. Jack listened intently, each voice contributing a vital thread to the fabric of the conversation. It was in this moment that he realized his fear of rejection and disconnection was shared. They were all searching for a way to navigate this transition together. Midway through, a younger man voiced a direct challenge. "What if we don't like what you're proposing? Will you stick with us or change everything? We've seen stores take the easy way out, and it hurts." Jack's heart raced. This was the very risk he had feared. Would his willingness to innovate push them away instead? Looking deep into the man's eyes, Jack spoke thoughtfully. "If my ideas create distance, then I need to rethink them. I'm here to adapt just as much as I expect you to embrace change. That's what community means, doesn't it?" The meeting continued, the air charged with electric energy, fueled by hope and apprehension. Jack felt an awakening, a realization that his role was not merely as a leader, but as a steward of their shared beliefs. A wave of determination swept over him, pushing aside viable hesitations. Engaging authentically meant bearing the risk of discomfort, but through it lay the potential for growth. As the discussion wrapped up, with laughter mingling with lingering questions, Jack felt a flicker of something new, the promise of possibility rooted in collaboration. He anticipated the feedback and how wisdom could flourish from it. The final words lingered in the air like an unfinished note. What if he had tapped into not just their ideas, but their courage to confront the future together? And in that fleeting moment, the exhilarating, terrifying thought crossed his mind. How would he handle a confrontation with those who outright dismissed the changes he believed could save them? In the weeks that followed the first community meeting, Jack Thompson found himself navigating the tumultuous waters of managerial responsibility and emotional awakening. Engaging with the community had become a revelation. Feedback sessions sprouted into lively discussions, each gathering brimming with tangible excitement for the evolving direction of Thompson's hardware. For the first time in years, Jack sensed that the store pulsed with renewed life, its very heartbeat resonating with the aspirations of its people. As Jack reflected on his journey, he noticed a profound shift within himself. The doubts that had once shackled him succumbed to the realization that he didn't just inherit a store, he inherited a legacy. Each conversation contributed to a mosaic of collective strength, providing him the courage to face the outside pressures he had once feared. Amidst the unfolding transformations, Jack encountered substantial pushback from the investment firm, which had been keeping a close watch on the shop's newfound momentum. One afternoon, he received a cold email hinting at their intention to pursue aggressive negotiations for acquisition. This message jolted him, not with fear, but with resolve. He had cultivated the support of the community, and he knew that he couldn't allow its voice to be silenced by opportunistic tactics. Jack convened a special gathering, inviting loyal customers and friends to discuss how to respond. As he paced the store lined with familiar tools, he watched faces filled with determination and grit. Jack grasped that this wasn't merely a business matter. It was a fight for the very soul of their community. "This isn't just my story, it's ours," he proclaimed, soaking in the gravity of those words. "I refuse to trade our legacy for a quick payout. Together, we will protect what makes Thompson's hardware special." The room buzzed with agreement. They collectively decided to draft a letter addressed to the firm, articulating their strong stance against the takeover. They crafted each word purposefully, a declaration of their commitment to preserving authenticity, community, and heritage. Jack was awash in pride as he witnessed connections deepen through their shared resolution. This was the transformation he had yearned for, not just revitalization of the store, but a united front representing the enduring values forged by his father. As the letter took shape, Jack felt the weight of his father's legacy rest comfortably on his shoulders. This act of defiance resonated with all the lessons learned under the gentle guidance of his dad. Belief in oneself extended beyond personal aspirations to encompass collective strength. Fueled by this newfound clarity and wisdom, he championed the final draft. After sending the letter, the response from the investment firm came swiftly. They expressed their surprise at the level of community engagement and hinted at renegotiating their strategy. It was a small victory, yet one that satisfied Jack deeply. They were no longer just a hardware store, but a beacon of resilience amid adversity. Buoyed by this triumph, Jack took one more step toward solidifying his personal transformation. He initiated monthly workshops at Thompson's Hardware that not only shared knowledge about tools and DIY projects, but also promoted discussions about sustaining local businesses. Each session became a deeper exploration of what it meant to be a part of the Thompson community, embedding the lessons of hard work and dedication that had built the business from the ground up. Months later, standing behind the counter of his bustling store, Jack marveled at how substantially he had changed. As the sun streamed into Thompson's hardware, illuminating the faces of people who were no longer just customers, but partners, he recognized the collective strength now woven into the fabric of the shop. Facing the uncertainties of the future no longer felt overwhelming. Instead, a sense of solid confidence enveloped him. He realized he had achieved not just personal and professional triumph, but had also cemented a legacy that would propel the store into the future while honoring the past. Jack Thompson stood tall. His vision was now a shared dream that had conquered fears, embraced challenges, and celebrated the transformative power of community, embodying the true essence of resilience. The store sign glimmered with renewed life, and the warmth of customer interactions resonated within him. Jack Thompson had achieved what he once thought impossible. He proved that embracing challenges rather than avoiding them paved the way for uncharted growth. In honoring his father's legacy, he had carved a new identity, not just as the owner of Thompson's Hardware, but as a leader poised confidently at the intersection of tradition and innovation. This was the moment of triumph he had long awaited, an authentic culmination of his journey that now defined a new chapter in his life. Jack deeply understood that his father's lessons were engraved not just in tools and wood, but etched in the fabric of community strength entwined with courage. Now is the time for you to step into your own journey of growth and transformation. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories that inspire individual resilience. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and keep these narratives alive. Comment your reactions and theories about Jack's incredible conclusion, and share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this powerful transformation. This is the moment to show your support. Don't wait even one more second to share.